Hello, I'm Rohin,
And I'm Praveen.
and we're the co hosts of the Ken's brand new weekly podcast, 2 by 2. It's also a very first subscriber only premium podcast. Don't worry, this episode isn't paywalled yet, as we wanted you to experience a few of these episodes before you decide if they're worth subscribing to. To be clear, you won't need a separate podcast subscription, but just a subscription to the Ken's premium tier. When we set out to create this podcast, we wanted to do the opposite of what most podcasts do. Most podcasts are produced. They're about answers, about explanations, about narratives and scripts. 2 by 2 doesn't have a script. We don't start with answers in mind. We won't offer explainers or narratives. Instead, what we will offer each week are pressing questions, hidden connections, and unexpected predictions. Not just from me and Praveen, but also an incredibly diverse and interesting set of guests with whom we'll have unstructured and stimulating discussions.
All connected through a few common strands: curiosity, first principles thinking, synthesis, contrarianism, investigative business journalism, and asking questions wherever they may lead.
Wherever they may lead, will often lead us and you to subjects that are rarely discussed in public because they're either too powerful, too opaque, or both. You can think of 2 by 2 as your personal investigative business brain. We'll find the biggest and most interesting issues you need to know about. We'll spot the hidden connections and unasked questions. We'll identify the cast of players and their motivations. We'll bring in incredible people to discuss these with, and we'll try to answer fundamental questions like, what is going on? Why is this happening? Who gains and who loses? And where is all of this leading to?
I like personal investigative brain. It has a really nice ring to it. But that's all right. But the more important question is, what kind of a name is 2 by 2? Well, 2 by 2 represents the purest form of a conflict, which is the 2 by 2 matrix. There are two axes, one going from left to right and another going from bottom to top, x-axis and y-axis. These two axes divide the underlying issues into four quadrants. And in life and in business, the most important and consequential decisions always involve conflict. Should you do A or B? Yes, we would all like to do A and B, but tell us, how easy has it been to optimize your professional career for both income and happiness? Or your eating habits for both taste and health? Or your investments for both returns and safety? Each episode of the 2 by 2 podcast will feature an important story investigated and discussed and visualized as a 2 by 2 matrix. You will see it as the episode cover. In fact, go on and check out the cover for the episode that you're listening to right now. We'll wait.
Now that you're back, let me tell you about the two companies about whom we're going to talk about in our first episode: Flipkart and PhonePe. They're both massive, with over 500 million registered users, meaning over half of all adults in India. They're both the leaders in their respective categories, e-commerce and digital payments. They're both owned by the same company, American retail giant Walmart. They're both gearing up for their respective IPOs. They're both led by ambitious and accomplished founders, Kalyan Krishnamurthy, CEO of Flipkart, and Sameer Nigam, CEO of PhonePe. Which brings me to the crux of our episode. They're both also increasingly stepping on each other's former turfs as they try to grow their customer base and revenue. Flipkart is moving into PhonePe's fintech turf with its own UPI and digital payments offerings under the Super Money brand. PhonePe is moving into Flipkart's e-commerce turf with its own hyperlocal delivery offerings under the PinCode brand. In an ideal world, the mass migration of millions of users from physical to digital in one of the world's largest markets would have neatly carved up the purchase path. Flipkart makes it easy to find what to buy. PhonePe makes it easy to pay for. In many ways, both would have solved each other's problems. But the world we live in is not ideal, as a result of which both Flipkart and PhonePe are hitting different limits to their ambitions. Flipkart's limit is the size of the e-commerce market in India, which we now know was overstated. The pie just isn't growing, or at least not fast enough. New customers just aren't getting added fast enough. Plus, there's competition from Meesho. PhonePay's limit is monetization. It rings around everyone else in terms of transactions, 22 billion a quarter. Yet, it made only close to rupees 3,000 crores in annual revenue compared to Flipkart's rupees 55,000 crores. As we all know, it's really hard to monetize UPI users. This is why they're both gradually moving in each other's directions too. When the overall market is only so big, niceties like staying out of your sibling stuff is, well, impossible. So, the question we wanted to ask is, where do these two giants advancing into each other's turfs meet? Where do the sparks fly? And might they collide? In the studio, we have two wonderful guests to discuss this with.
The first is Professor R. Srinivasan, who teaches strategy at the Indian Institute of Management in Bangalore. He has been teaching strategy for over a quarter of a century and for the last decade focused on studying platform business models. He also leads IIMB's Center for Digital Public Goods, and one of his recent experiments at tying strategy with execution was to get his students to undertake 400 Namayatri taxi rides in a single month just to better understand things. Professor Srinivasan has a doctoral degree from IIM Ahmedabad, and he's also a visiting professor at the FAU Erlangen-Nuremberg in Germany.
Our second guest is Srikanth Rajagopalan, the CEO of Perfios Account Aggregation, who also runs Anumati, one of the earliest startups in the account aggregator space. In a career spanning nearly 30 years, Srikanth has worked at FMCG companies, tech startups, global credit card giants, telecom companies, and cloud computing. Srikanth is an MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta. Though his current professional interests are in privacy, data protection and governance, digital public infrastructure, and SaaS in the financial service industry, we were thrilled to have him for this episode because he was previously part of the team that started Amazon Pay and AWS's financial services play in India. And also because he was a founding team member of a startup attempting mobile commerce way back in 2007 over 2G networks. Okay, before we get on with the episode, just 1 minute to introduce ourselves, your hosts. I'm Rohin Dharmakumar, co-founder and CEO of The Ken. In an earlier life, I was the host of First Principles, The Ken's acclaimed weekly leadership podcast. Now, I'm all in on 2x2. Like a moth to a flame, I'm drawn to business stories that feature high stakes, unknown outcomes, and unresolved questions.
I'm Praveen Gopal Krishnan, CEO of The Ken. I also write the Nutgraph, The Ken's weekend newsletter, which incidentally just turned 5 years old. And I'm joining Rohin in 2x2 because you simply can't keep me away from anything that's about stories, connections, and companies. Welcome to 2x2, The Ken's and India's first premium business podcast. We are your personal investigative brain, and we release new episodes every Thursday, 6 a.m. with one 2x2 matrix to understand the world around us. Let's begin.